Hi guys, welcome to the Tope Lana channel. My name is Tope and today we're talking about sustainable development, whether or not international institutions, not-for-profit organizations are really making a difference with their investment, or there's just a lot about international development and there's really not much action or much more growth in the first place. Again, if you haven't yet subscribed, you're welcome to my channel. Please subscribe. It's really easy to do and it would make sure, or it will give us more privileges and it will ensure that we can reach more people. So please go ahead and subscribe, and please also don't watch this video alone. Share with people that you think would need to see this. And when you have a discussion around sustainable development, I hope that it would help you to know what to say and how to contribute. And I hope that this conversation will also help you to think at a deeper level about what you can be doing regarding development. Now let's get right into it. What exactly is sustainability, or what does it mean to be sustainable? To be sustainable simply means something is growing in an increasing or in a steady momentum. To be sustainable simply means that the momentum is being steadily maintained. We are not depleting the nature's resources. We are not harming people's lives or the environment or the economy. And what exactly is development? Development means that something is growing, it's progressing, it's moving forward. So putting that together, sustainable development simply means, and this was a term that was coined by the Brundtland theory, Brundtland report, and it simply says that sustainable development involves concerted effort towards making the world more equitable, more fair, more just for the whole world, developing the present without impacting or compromising on the coming generations' ability to fend for themselves. That's just, the simple definition. So sustainable development means that the world is progressing in this present generation without harming or disrupting the future generations' capacity to also progress. And as the two words say, sustainable and development, it means that it needs to be increasing and it needs to be at a momentum that we can maintain. The world needs to be progressing at a pace that we can keep up with, that is not harming but actually being beneficial for everyone involved, the society, people, the planet, the environment. So sustainable development covers people, humans, and the planet. Now, why is it such a big deal? If you're like me and you're not living under a cave anywhere, you know that in this time, sustainable development, sustainability has become such a buzzword. Almost every company, almost every government, almost every corporate organization, almost every individual too is talking about development, talking about sustainability. Is it really, really such a big deal? Yes, I believe it is, because where we are right now in the world, we can be so much more better, we can be so much more advanced, we can be so much more higher, given advancements in technology, in health, in transportation, given globalization. It's expected that we are increasing, but we have some countries, in fact the whole world hasn't really achieved the peak of sustainable development right now. And I just want to share some backstory into why it is such a big deal right now. In my opinion, I think the world has begun to realize that where we are can be, or where we're going to, the pace that we're going can be harmful for the future generations. And it's also not at par with where we're supposed to be. So there is a global outcry for nations, for communities to be involved in sustainable development. Now, the United Nations, which is a body responsible for brokering peaceful relations and cooperation around the world, in 2000 came up with the Millennial Development Goals, which was supposed to be a set of principles around equality, around economic growth, and the like. 8 key areas that were supposed to be targets for the world to achieve development. Now that needed to be expanded upon, and in September 2015, the member nations of the United Nations signed an agreement to begin to adopt the Sustainable Development Goals, which are the SDGs, 17 SDGs around making sure that the world is more sustainable, and that was, it went live in January 2016. Now, why this backstory? Because the SDGs are really a popular metric right now for measuring how the world is developing, how nations are developing. And you might have heard of SDG 1, SDG 2, 3, or all the like up till 17. The common thing that we have with all these factors is that they are addressing 3 key areas. So the first one is under the economy, which is talking around economic growth, GDP, national prosperity, and basically economies thriving and becoming more prosperous. And we have the second focus areas, which are people, which we call society, right? And that talks around healthcare, and everything that has to do with impacting people's lives so that their lives are more prosperous or they're thriving better. It covers health, education, and things that have to do with making human lives much more better. And then we have the third focus area, which is on the environment. So this covers things like climate action, clean energy, making sure waste are disposed properly, and everything that has to do with the planet, the trees, land on air, water, and the sea, and all of that. Now, these 3 focus areas are just a benchmark or something to make sure that the world is achieving, or we're progressing and we're not retrogressing. And in some places, in some areas in the world, it actually feels like we're retrogressing, we're going backwards, because it seems like the economy is becoming much more difficult. It seems like, the environment is becoming much more polluted. This year alone, I've read so many stories about places in Nigeria, in India, that are dealing with like their situations of climate change, where their environment is covered with soot and all of that. So these issues are actually really, really serious, because look at it. I think way back in 2021, I was reading one of the World Development Reports, and I actually started crying, because I'm like, this is not even the actual reality of what some nations are going through. And just from looking at this, I can tell that it's already so bad. So where are we really going to? Like, we really are not where we should be anywhere at all. Now, I just want to talk about today's topic, right, which is, are these international organizations, global organizations, companies and corporate sector really, really making a change when it comes to sustainability and sustainable development? I want to explain this situation with some concepts. First off, I'll talk about liberalism. Liberalism, quote and unquote, in very simple terms, just talks around every nation, every global state, every country, in quotes, not being the only actor. So it simply says that there are a lot of actors that have to do with development, that are concerned or that have a role to play when it comes to development, and that states are actually equally powerful as international institutions. So my country, Nigeria, the country, Canada, United States, they are all very important figures when it comes to development, and not just international institutions like the World Trade Organization, the United Nations, that states everyone is actually important. Liberalism. There is another side of the coin called realism, and realism simply says that it's a cutthroat world. Everybody's fighting for their own rights, everybody has their own interests, so that states are naturally selfish, and that the international system runs on an anarchy, meaning that there is no leader, there is no law, there is no control. Everybody just does what they do to fend for themselves and to make sure that they're getting the good end of the bargain for themselves. That's what realism talks about. And then there is idealism. Idealism states that everyone needs to cooperate. So idealism is really big on cooperation. Idealism, as the word says that there is an ideal state, and the ideal state has to involve concerted efforts by all parties so that the world is thriving. Idealism also says that for you as a nation to be, on the international scene pushing a certain agenda, it should mean that in the local scene you're also pushing that agenda. So again, to explain, that simply says that as a country, India for instance, if India is big on women empowerment and education, they should be big on that nationally, so they should be pushing for that, so that on the international space, that's an extension of what they are doing locally. And I think for the purpose of this argument today, I'm going to go with the idealism school of thought, because I personally believe that yes, there are a number of organizations doing amazing things so that the world is more equitable. We have a lot of foundations, we have international institutions coming up with policies, we have nations that are trying to go under open governance, and so many other things that make sure that they are trying to work towards equity and treat injustice and discrimination and fighting poverty. And that's fantastic, right? There are so many issue areas, but largely we need much more cooperation. I believe that for any nation to progress or for the whole world to progress, individual nations first of all have to be thriving. So I believe that you can't take principles from another nation and just copy and paste or drag and drop the same models, the same principles, and you think that it would work, because it doesn't exactly work like that. There are different contexts, there are different scenarios, they have peculiar situations, and you need to understand the setting so that you can create tailor-made solutions for that nation. And I want to just explain that some more. I believe that first of all, for there to be development, everybody, like the idealist theory says, that everybody needs to be working together. Again, what's sustainable development? It's a concerted effort so that the planet and the people are well catered for now and in the future. And that simply just says that for an organization to want to invest in another country, they need to know that there is something in that country that, they need, right? Or, so realists will say that there is nothing like goodwill. There is nothing like I'm trying to give to develop another state. I'm doing that because I'm getting some certain benefits. Liberalism will say that, well, everybody has equal states. Let's all just, do what we can do and all of that. But idealism says that, first of all, you have to create local solutions to local problems. And that's really the truth, because sustainable development is such a good thing. And yes, there are frameworks that the United Nations has put together. There are principles that apply to a lot of countries. I know there is this nomenclature that scholars have grouped nations according to their categories, according to how they are developing. You have the developing nations and you have the underdeveloped nations. First of all, every nation needs to be developed, right? And not just that, there are some certain conditions that might make that ensure that your nation is thriving how they should. And what I'm just trying to explain is that every nation, first of all, needs to get to the point where they are thriving independently. They are thriving. Yes, they need support, but for them to first of all be stakeholders in the international system, the local system has to work. And one thing I have noticed in my experience so far, volunteering and working with some enterprises and social development organizations, is that sometimes there seems to be an emphasis on a particular region or a particular area of the SDGs or what have you. So everybody seems to be going to one particular region to do some work, or everybody seems to be addressing some certain issues, or they are trying to say, okay, this works in this nation, let's apply that there. But that doesn't necessarily always get solutions, because like I said earlier, these solutions have to be tailor-made to the situations. So I'm really big on training local citizens, letting people within that community understand what the issues are, and then coming up on their own with the support of other stakeholders to say these are the solutions, and then working together to make sure that those solutions are now they are resolved and they are worked on, so that there can be development, so that there can be growth. So for me, there has been an emphasis on just pushing out solutions that may not necessarily be working for a particular context. So if I bring down something that is working in Jordan and I bring it to Bangladesh and I say I want this to work there, some things might work, but I also need to understand the peculiar situation and peculiar context in this other place before I can adapt that situation or that solution there. That's one thing. Another thing is that rather than emphasizing only on one particular focus areas, we need to be more deliberate about everybody being aware of what all the situations are, so that each person can focus on their strengths and their focus areas. And then thirdly, we all need to work together as concerted efforts. So it's not the job of a government alone to do development. It's not the job of the private sector alone to make money, but they also need to be working towards development. And the focus areas, they don't just need to be working on the particular communities where they are invested in. What happens to the other communities? They also need development, and if it's in your power to do something about it, you definitely should be doing something. It's not just the job of international institutions to enforce or to, put some analysis in place. Everybody needs to be making attempts. Everybody needs to be looking at the dashboard to say, are we making progress? And also, I think very importantly, this approach of making it such a buzzword or making it like a lingo and a corporate thing to do without actually really meaning well for the communities, or without creating long-term sustainable, keyword sustainable, something that can outlive you, something that has like depth, something that is not shallow just for photo ops. That also is very important, because we've seen a number of cases where it just appears as if there's a thing going on, but there is no long-term impact to the community, there is no long-term impact to the community, there is no long-term impact to the nation. And I think this is a very simplistic view of it, but basically if we think about it like this, everybody wants to thrive. How can I help my neighboring country thrive? How can I help my neighboring community thrive? If we think about it like that, we can be much more open to collaborating, to doing things that would make sure that every community thrives, not just the one we're in. And we have to create an enabling environment for the people within that environment to know what the issues are. I think that one very major mistake that I have seen a number of times is that we just come up with like a solution without actually looking at the in-depth problem or seeing if this thing that we're trying to present is going to work. And if you don't even understand the problem in the first place, how can we say that we are creating a solution that would work? It wouldn't really work. So to answer my question today, I mean, it's a myriad of issues, a myriad of challenges. But I think that for me, one very, very key factor is that citizens have to be informed. They have to know why sustainable development is needed. They have to be carried along in creating solutions. Corporations, institutions, government shouldn't just do it to look good, but we need to be looking long term at what the solutions are and who can we bring on board. We need to also start early by teaching children early, by also doing everybody has a part to play. I really believe that everyone is a stakeholder, young or old. So basically every country has a role to play, whether it's Kenya, Jordan, Canada, Morocco, every country has a role to play. But we also need to be genuinely looking out for the interest of the nations and not just for gains for each. I know that seems like a very simplistic thing to say, but that's really the only way we can achieve development. And then enough of focusing only on one area or one particular sector because it seems like a buzzing thing. How else can you contribute? What else can you do? How can you train people around you? And for me, that's a really big thing, and that's why I really always advocate for local citizens always knowing what is happening around them and knowing what they need to do as well. Sustainable development is not something that is only for big corporations or the government. It affects every one of us. In fact, even affects the most vulnerable communities and populations much more than, the so-called successful and thriving ones, because ultimately they're the ones that have to bear the brunt of some of these situations that we don't tackle effectively on. And I think that another thing I want to say to just close up is that sustainable development needs to be very proactive. We need to look at these situations before they become a major issue. And where we are right now in the world, we really do have a lot of work to do concerning development, concerning international development, which involves tackling inequality and discrimination and injustice in the international system. So all of these things are really some things that I want you to think about. Think about how can my organization, how can my community, how can I create solutions and products that are tackling some of these issues? How can I make sure that my footprint is not harming the environment, is not harming my community, not harming my neighbor, but it's making sure that posterity has something to thank me for, because really our lives are not just for us, they are a blessing to everyone else. And that's really what we should be looking forward to, making sure that our lives have a footprint that is in the sands of time and can be remembered for good. I hope that you've learned something from this video. I hope that you're going to think deeper about sustainable development and you're going to pay more attention when it comes to creating a lasting impact. Thank you for watching. Please let me know if there's anything that you'd like me to touch on some more around this topic in the future, and I will see you in my next video. Remember to subscribe and share. Bye.